So today we'll be doing a quarterback tier list, and people seem to love to be making lists nowadays, especially since quarantine started because, we're bored, there's no sports, so people just like making lists, and I figured I might as well try it. So I'm going to do a quarterback tier list here, and, different categories of superstars all the way to trash, and you can see who the one trash guy is, and those who know me knows it hurts my heart because I love myself some Josh Rosen. But anyway, this should be a fun video. This is my first video in the new house. As you can see, I've never had this background before, so hopefully it's good. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Leave in the comments which ones you think I missed, where you would put people, and all that type of stuff, and let's get into it. So for the superstar / elite section, I just limited that to 2 players. I hold those guys very highly as compared to the rest of the league. And of course, it's Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson. So we'll start with Mahomes. He's been a starter full time for 2 years now. He's had a season of over 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. He has a Super Bowl. Could have had 2 Super Bowls in his first 2 years starting, which is like an insane thought. If one guy wasn't offsides, Patrick Mahomes could have been a 2-time Super Bowl champion by the age of 24. It is possible. But unfortunately, that was not the case. So 50 touchdowns his first year. He had 26 his second year. Did miss a couple games with the knee injury he had on Thursday night. But the guy has been a baller in the regular season, obviously. He has a great offense around him. I have to admit that. Andy Reid helps as well. Having Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and all these fast receivers around him definitely helps for sure. But I have to give Patrick Mahomes a lot of credit. He is a fantastic talent. He's making these no-look passes and just making things look easy. He has one of the best arms in the NFL. He's just one of the most fun guys to watch, in my opinion. In the playoffs as well, he has been a great performer. So his lifetime playoff touchdown to interception ratio is 13-2, and he's 4-1 in the playoffs. The one loss, of course, was that tough Patriots game where, honestly, they probably should have won. So this guy's taking the league by storm, and we'll see. He just signed that, $500 million deal. So he'll be doing this for a long time, and I'm excited to see what he can accomplish, and that team is scary. They just re-signed Chris Jones as well, so we'll see what Patrick Mahomes has for store on us in the future, but I don't think anyone's going to argue that he is a superstar and an elite player for sure. So next to him, we have Russell Wilson, and the one word I can use to define Russell Wilson is just a winner. His lifetime record in the NFL was 86-41-1. So obviously when the guy came in the league, he had a great team, a great defense, a better offensive line at the time until he got his big contract. But honestly, the last few seasons, I don't think the Seahawks had that great of a roster, but Russell Wilson plays at such a high level that they find a way to just have these 9, 10, 11 win seasons when I feel like they probably shouldn't. Like if you took Russell Wilson out of Seattle and started his backup, who I think is Geno Smith actually, how many wins is that Seahawks team getting? Like 4, 5 maybe? I mean, like, come on. Like Russell Wilson, they say football's not a one-man game, but I think Russell Wilson definitely is one of the outliers for that saying. He is a fantastic player, and when they hired their offensive coordinator, I think it's Brian Schottenheimer, they decided to run the ball a lot, and at first I was like, why are you doing that? You have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Wouldn't you want to throw the ball more? But that has made Russell Wilson so much more efficient. Like his seasons the past 2 years have been so efficient and stuff that we have not seen before. Like he doesn't throw the ball as much as he used to now, but when he throws the ball, I mean, he's great. His completion percentage is now up to 65, 66 the past 2 years. So he's been great, and they find a way to make the playoffs. I don't think that team is good enough to win a Super Bowl right now, but as long as you have Russell Wilson, you're going to make the playoffs in all likelihood. They play in a tough division, but they find a way to make it. So I think this guy, for what he has around him right now, which I don't think is that great, he does all he can and puts up great numbers year after year. The guy should be a 2-time Super Bowl champion. They were 1 yard away. We know what happened, but at least he got one against a team that was supposedly the best offense in football history, the Peyton Manning Broncos, and they dismantled them, obviously. So Wilson's had a bunch of playoff experience. He's done well in those games. There's been some games he hasn't played well. I think in the one Packers game where, what's his name, something Bostic dropped the onside kick. He didn't play well in that game, I remember, but for the most part, Russell Wilson's been very good in the playoffs and stuff. So the guy's had a great career. He's still like 31, 32 years old, so he probably has a lot of good football ahead of him as well. So for the next category, we have great quarterbacks. So these guys I still think are, top 5 in the league, I would say, in terms of just being really good players. I wouldn't put them at the very top like I have Mahomes and Wilson, but like I would take them for my team any day. So first we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson, and he was a 2017 draft pick, I believe. So his first year he was not an immediate starter. I remember it was Tom Savage who went against like the Jaguars, and that's when Sacksonville was created. They sacked him, it felt like 12 times in one game. Then Watson came in, I think, around halftime. They got much better. Watson just continued to play throughout the season for, I think, 6 starts, and then, of course, tore his ACL in practice. And Watson, as a starter in 2017, his first year, went 3-3. And I think the Texans, I don't know if they went 3-13 that year, but like they really did not win many games when Watson was gone. They might have won one game without Watson, but they really could not win without him. So they were 500 with him and might have won one game without him. And that just either tells you how good Deshaun Watson is or how bad Tom Savage is, maybe somewhere in the middle. But Deshaun Watson is a special talent, another guy with a great arm. He doesn't need a great offensive line. We've seen it already. Deshaun Watson does not have the best offensive line. We know that, especially his first couple years in the league, and trading for Tunsil helped in 2019. But his first couple of years, he's had 2 seasons over 10 wins, 11-5, then 10-6. He's been in the playoffs, and he has not won the big game yet or gotten to a conference championship game. I hate his coach. I think Bill O'Brien is horrible. Even before he made these terrible trades, I was never a big Bill O'Brien fan, and now he has his top receiver in Arizona. But hey, he has David Johnson, right? That's fantastic. No, it's not. That's a terrible trade. The Texans' defense is still, I guess, decent, but it's not great. So we'll see. Deshaun Watson has to be great for this team to make the playoffs, and this might be one of those quarterbacks that's going to get one of those huge paydays soon. I don't think he'll make Patrick Mahomes level type money, but like he's going to make a lot. He's going to have a long-term contract as well. He's been durable outside of the ACL injury. He did play 15 games last year, 16 the year before, but I think Watson's a great player, has a very good future ahead of him. He's only 24, 25 years old, so hopefully for the next decade or so, Deshaun Watson will continue to be great. Next to him, we have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson just came off an MVP performance, and I feel like I might get some comments saying, like, why don't you have him in the superstar/elite category? And you can definitely argue that, but for me right now, he's just not good enough of a passer. Now, I don't want to make that sound like a bad thing. I was actually on Lamar Jackson's side before this MVP season, telling people, let's give Lamar Jackson a chance. He improved as a passer every year at Louisville. I don't know why people think he can't become a good NFL quarterback in terms of a passer. And the guy went out and threw for 36 touchdowns. He had just over 3,000 yards, but still, the guy rushed for 1,200 yards as well. So Lamar Jackson is a guy that if he stays healthy, of course, the way he plays is a bit reckless, but he really hasn't had an injury history, so that's great news, obviously. But if he can stay healthy and continue to play like this, that would be a quarterback that's going to be one of the best in the league for a long time. For me, he just has to be a bit better on just accuracy for passing. That's really the only thing I can hold against him. Outside of that, I think Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. He shows a great deep ball sometimes. He has great speed, obviously. I think he's one of the best athletes in football in terms of any position, not just quarterbacks. So, when you're rushing for 1,200 yards as a quarterback, you're doing some special things. So this guy, as I said, if he just improves on the passing accuracy, will be fine. And he proves that, he can win games in the NFL. This guy's definitely a winner. He's 19-3 in the NFL in the regular season. He took over for Flacco, went 6-1 in 2018. Then last year, of course, they went 13-2, which is just phenomenal. So, not 13. They went 14-2, but he went 13-2 because he didn't start till last week. But in the playoffs, he's 0-2. So that's the one bad thing about him right now. Of course, they lost to the Titans, and they were definitely a favorite in that game. I remember myself, I bet pretty heavy on the Ravens that week, and I didn't really buy into the Titans, but they proved me wrong. But I think one day Lamar Jackson will, win the big game, especially if he stays healthy. I think the Ravens right now have such a good team, and as long as they just keep building that thing the right way, they'll be fine. But Lamar has to stay healthy, and if he loses again in the playoffs next year, there might be this BS narrative that Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs, which I don't think is right for a guy that basically, I would say at that point would be starting for 2 years, because in 2018 he was kind of just thrown into it in the middle of the year. You know what I mean? So he did lose to the Chargers, I think it was, in his first year in the playoffs, but that guy was playing his 8th NFL game. It's not like I could really hold that against him. I think they made the right move. They weren't going to win with Joe Flacco, but to hold that against him, I feel like is not right. So to me, he's technically 0-1 in the playoffs in my mind. So we'll see what he does next year. They have a great team around him, and I think that team is great. Lamar Jackson Jackson is great, and if he improves as a passer even more, and as I said, is more accurate, he can be the best quarterback in the league, maybe behind Mahomes, maybe tied with him. But if he improves as a passer, that guy can do some special things. So next to him, we have Drew Brees. And Drew Brees' career the past few years has been kind of odd because he went from a guy that's going to throw for 5,000 plus yards a year to a guy that's actually just going to throw for around 4,000 yards, but just be really efficient. And it's weird. The Saints defense got much better in 2017. Their team as a whole got better in 2017. And due to that, he didn't have to pass the ball as much, and therefore he wasn't throwing for 5,000 yards, 5,200 yards every season like he once did. So the Saints used to go 6-10, 7-9, and Drew Brees would have to come from behind in all these games and just have a bunch of passing attempts. But now that the Saints play up in every game, basically, he doesn't have to do that. So I think it's great for him. He's now 40 years old, I believe. He was this close to retirement this offseason, apparently. I think he admitted. So, he might give it one more go. We'll see what happens. But now his backup is Jameis Winston, so they do have a good backup there. I don't think Jameis will give him any run for a starting job, obviously. That's Brees' job, as we know. But him and Sean Payton have been such a great quarterback and coach duo for a long time. The thing that concerns me about Brees, obviously, is his arm strength. I've said this for about a year and a half now. Since the middle of the 2018 season, I've noticed his arm just kind of didn't look like it used to, but he still gets by because his intermediate accuracy is so great in his decision making, and he can just basically tell what any defense is doing at the line. So that definitely allows him to play from ahead mentally, but I don't think he has what he used to have physically, if that makes sense. But he is so smart that he can still get by. So his accuracy is great. I don't think he can throw the ball 60, 70 yards anymore, but you kind of don't need to in some cases, especially when you're as accurate as Drew Brees. And the guy's had a monster career. He's broken so many records now, so we'll see. He might fall off this year, honestly. He can go from great to just below average. You never know. So when you turn, 40, 41 years old, whatever he is, that's definitely a concern. But, we'll see what happens. I think last year he still played at an elite level. He only played in 11 games because of the thumb injury, but when he played, he was fine. He had 27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 74% completion percentage, which is insane. But honestly, his average depth of target was probably not that much. As I said, it was a lot of short passes, and that's why people say, oh, Michael Thomas only runs slant routes and stuff like that. But, Drew Brees does throw a lot of short passes, but he's very good at it, so I got to give him some credit. But for me, for the numbers he's still putting up and what he produces on the field, he's still a great player in my mind. Next to Brees, we have Tom Brady, and some people might be surprised by this. I know people want to call Tom Brady washed and all that because his numbers last year weren't so great. So last season he threw for over 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He was 12-4 as a quarterback, which is great. An 88 quarterback rating, which is his lowest since 2013. So that's a long time. So I understand why people think that he's falling off, but to me, I've said this for a while now, I just think it was the guys not getting open at the receivers, for the Patriots. I really think outside of Julian Edelman, he didn't really have anyone to rely on. I mean, who was it? Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry, who struggled as a rookie. You have tight end Ryan Izzo. Who was this guy supposed to throw to that was getting open? I mean, he went from Rob Gronkowski and I know Josh Gordon was there for maybe a few games at one point, but still, his receiving core is not what it once was, and he was playing with not so great receivers last year, so I can't solely blame Tom Brady. I think he did all he could. I think the offensive line was fine for the Patriots last year. It wasn't great, but it was fine. But the guys he was throwing to were just not getting open. So for me personally, I think on this new team, the Buccaneers, with a coach that has had so much success with quarterbacks, I know Jameis Winston led the league in turnovers, but aside from that, and just like Jameis said, he was balling. So, you think back to Carson Palmer with him. I forget who else. I think Andrew Luck with him, Ben Roethlisberger with Arians. So he's had a lot of success with other quarterbacks, and he's a great coach for that. So I think having weapons like Godwin and O.J. Howard and Rob Gronkowski and Mike Evans and Cameron Brate, I mean, that is just, what else can you ask for a quarterback? And their offensive line in Tampa is not that bad. We'll see how Tristan Wirfs plays and stuff like that, but still, their offensive line is not that bad. So I think as long as Brady has time, I think he's going to have a great year. I'm not going to say he's going to throw for 5,000 yards, but the guy can easily get 30 touchdowns and throw for less than 10 interceptions with this type of team. So I'm excited for Brady. It'll be a very interesting thing to watch how the Buccaneers offense plays, but if it goes how I think it's going to go, I think Tom Brady has another really good season next year and even better than he did last year. Up next, we have Aaron Rodgers, and once again, this might surprise people because when you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers last year, they weren't that great. They didn't stand out as much. They wasn't like the sexy 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. He did throw for just over 4,000 yards. He had 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But I love Aaron Rodgers because he does not turn the ball over. He has led the league in interception percentage in back-to-back years. In 2018, he had a 25-2 touchdown interception ratio. Then last year, it was 26-4. So the guy at this point in his career rarely turns the ball over. His team went 13-3 in the regular season, and you know what? He's kind of facing that thing that Drew Brees felt a few years ago. His team around him got better, the defense specifically, and now he's not asked to do as much, and his passing attempts have gone down as compared to previous years. And there was one point in his career where Rodgers was throwing for 40 touchdowns, less than 10 interceptions and stuff like that, which was great, and that was when Rodgers was in his prime. But Aaron Rodgers is still a great quarterback. I think he's 36, 37 now, but he can still get the job done for sure. I think the Packers are one of the worst drafts in football I've ever seen, at least since following the draft this season, so that kind of sucks. And drafting Jordan Love is a decision that I personally did not agree with, and we'll see if it pays off in the future. We'll definitely find out in the next decade or so, but for me, it just made no sense at this time. But Rodgers is still a great player. I mean, people don't like him because he won't take risk, but at the same time, I don't want a guy that's going to throw me out of the game. Give me the Rodgers type and not the Jameis Winston type, you know what I mean? So people have issues, and honestly, outside of Devontae Adams, the guy does not have much weapons. I mean, Jimmy Graham can barely move at this point in his career. I know he's gone now to Chicago. Who else they have? Geronimo Allison. They have Equanimous St. Brown, like people that just probably don't get separation. He's out here trying to play with these guys. It's no longer the Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings type teams he used to have, and Jermichael Finley. These are guys that are obviously not as good. So hopefully one of his other receivers steps up. I wish the Packers addressed it in a very wide receiver heavy draft. Of course, they did not do that. But it was weird. Very weird draft for them. I still can't get over it. But for Aaron Rodgers, great player. He does not take that many sacks. He took 49 the year prior, but outside of that, he won't really throw you out of a game. He's not going to lose you a game. He'll definitely have moments where he comes back. I mean, I remember that week 1 game from 2018 where he came back from the broken leg, whatever it was, and came back from a 20-0 deficit, which was awesome. So I think with Matt LaFleur, it was a great fit last year. He had some games last year where he dominated. I think it was a game against the Raiders. He had like 5 touchdowns, 0 picks, so he still got it. I mean, last year in the playoffs was just awful. They could not stop the run, so I wouldn't really blame Rodgers for that one, but I hope this guy gets another ring. Rodgers is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, and I just like him as a person. I know some people think he's like a D-bag, but I like Rodgers, honestly. So hopefully he gets another one. I was rooting for the Packers hard last year, but if they're in the playoffs again next year, I'll probably be rooting for him. So next category here we have will be good/great at some point. So the first guy here is Kyler Murray. I think he'll be better than good or great. I think Kyler Murray is a future superstar. I've said it many times. I just think he has it all. I went back and watched him from last season the other day. I'm actually making a video about him supporting that argument of why I think he's a superstar quarterback. He literally can do everything. I mean, I know he's like, 5'9" maybe or something like that, but I really don't care about that stuff. He is so quick. He has a really great arm for his size. His accuracy is tremendous, and he doesn't really need an offensive line. I know it's kind of stupid to say that, but like the Cardinals' offensive line last year was not that great. There's no way it went from what it was in 2018 to 2019 and just was completely different. It still was pretty bad last year, but Kyler Murray is so quick. I think he's the quickest player in football. You could think I'm wrong about that. He's not the fastest player, but quickest player in football in my mind. I guess him being small and low to the ground definitely helps that, and maybe it's just the perception because of his size, but he is the quickest player in the league in my opinion. So seeing that and getting out of any sticky situation that your offensive line gets you into, I think that helps him tremendously. He's on a good team. I think his deep ball is phenomenal. It kind of reminds me of Russell Wilson in a way, the way he can drop it into a bucket, the way that not many quarterbacks can. I love that about him. And, I was a guy that I think I did a mock draft for the Giants before, like, Kyler Murray was definitely going to the Cardinals, and I was, like, praying that Kyler Murray would fall to number 6 so the Giants could take him. But I really think this guy with Cliff Kingsbury is a great match as well. The spread offense, air raid offense, all that stuff. And his weapons are just awesome. I love Christian Kirk's a great player. Of course, Hopkins. You saw Larry Fitzgerald in the slot. Andy Isabella was really good last year. I mean, I saw he had 2 catches last year where the yards after catch ability really showed. One of them was that game against the San Francisco 49ers on Thursday night that he took for like 75 yards. So they have some great weapons there. I don't know who the tight end is. I think it might be Charles Clay still, which is like decent, I guess, but still. They got rid of Ricky Seals-Jones, who I like, but he has great weapons there. He has a really good offensive coach as well. I like what they're doing there. They added Kenyon Drake as well. So that team is really good. Kyler Murray's going to be a superstar one day, and I just think he's going to be a great player. Next to him, we have Joe Burrow. So, of course, we have not seen him play yet, but I'm very high on Joe Burrow. This is one of the best college seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback. I think he's the next Tony Romo type guy. I've seen that comparison a lot, and I see it for sure. I think he has a lot of Tony Romo type traits, the way he can just make things happen on broken plays, and I just like the way he his accuracy and stuff like that. I think he's a really good deep ball thrower as well. So when you watched his ball placement last year at LSU, it was a thing of beauty, honestly. There weren't many throws last year where it was like a head scratcher. Like everything was just perfectly placed, it seemed like, and it was crazy. I don't know if that can translate to that level, and him going to the Bengals, an organization that is just terrible, definitely scares me a bit, but at the same time, the guy is a really great player, and I just think one day, as long as the Bengals don't ruin him, I think he'll be fine, so I'm excited for him. Then last, we have Drew Locke. So Drew Locke was a guy I really liked in Missouri. I was definitely higher on Kyler Murray, but I like Drew Locke a lot. I think Drew Locke was a guy who had a really high ceiling. I would have taken him over Dewayne Haskins, and I love chasing ceilings with quarterbacks. That might be a bad thing about me, but I love going after a guy that I think has superstar traits, and I think Drew Locke might be that guy. He has a fantastic arm, another guy that can make things happen on broken plays. He can squeeze balls into windows that some quarterbacks just can't do, and as a starter last year, I think he went 4-1, showed a lot of really good things. In his first start, had a really great pass to Courtland Sutton on his first touchdown, and he proved right away that he can play. I mean, I have no doubts about that. Now they gave him a supporting cast with like Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. They still have Sutton. They have Noah Fant. They have great players around him, an offensive line that's decent, I guess, but they have great players around him. They got Melvin Gordon. They got Phillip Lindsay. Royce Freeman still there. So their supporting cast for Drew Locke is phenomenal. And I think as long as their offensive line holds up and isn't awful, I think Drew Locke's going to be really good. So I'm excited for him and the Broncos' future for sure. So now on the quarterbacks that I think are good, I'm going to try and speed this video up a bit because we're taking a while. But a good quarterback to me is just someone that is above average. They can maybe win a Super Bowl for you. They're not elite players, but they're good. That's really all I can say. So Dak Prescott last year had a bunch of passing yards. They had a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. They now add new head coach Mike McCarthy. They have great weapons. They added CeeDee Lamb in the draft, so that was great. And they still have other great receivers like Gallup, and they have, why is it slipping my mind, Amari Cooper. So Blake Jarwin could step up a tight end for them. And Prescott, I always thought was just going to be a game manager when I watched him his first couple years. Of course, being a Giants fan, I watched a lot of Prescott. Got to see his first NFL start, and he was definitely impressive in some ways, but I just always thought he'd be a game manager that was going to be a pretty good quarterback because the team around him was great. Of course, the offensive line in Dallas is great as well, but the guy has really good weapons, and he proved to me last year that he is better than just a game manager / serviceable average quarterback. So I think last year he took a step. I think he could get even better. We'll see what type of contract he gets. As I said, as a Giants fan, I'm hoping he gets all the money in the world that he wants, but we'll have to see. But I do think he's a good quarterback at this point. Matthew Stafford, I've always loved Stafford. I've always had like a soft spot for him. Unfortunately, the past 2 years have not gone the way he's expected. Of course, with the back injuries, I don't know if he'll be healthy, obviously, but if he is, I think he'll be fine. I think Matt Stafford has a fantastic arm. He's underrated in my opinion. He puts up good numbers every year. I feel like it's similar numbers, but still, it's good numbers. But the team around him is just awful. So we'll see if they can get something going there. But I'm excited to see if he can come back and play 16 games, and I'm really rooting for him. Seems like a good guy. Next, we have Ben Roethlisberger. He played 1.5 games last year, and of course I can't base anything off of that. But before that, Roethlisberger has had like a late career surge where he's put up great numbers. Not having Antonio Brown has hurt a bit. I'm not going to lie. They need Juju Smith-Schuster to step up a bit, and they have other guys like James Washington and stuff like that. So we'll see if those guys can step up. But Roethlisberger himself, as long as the offensive line there is still good, their offensive line is getting a bit up there in age, but it still should be good. He still has some weapons there as well. I think he'll be fine. So Roethlisberger's another guy, just like Matthew Stafford. I'm excited to see if he can play all 16 games, but I would still consider Ben Roethlisberger a good quarterback. It would not surprise me if he somehow put up 35 touchdowns and 4,500 yards next year. Next, we have Carson Wentz. He's a guy that definitely, like Aaron Rodgers, protects the ball really well. Definitely fumbles a good amount, but still protects the ball really well in terms of interceptions. The thing about him is he just can't stay healthy sometimes. When they had that great season, he tore his ACL. Then last year had the concussion on a pretty late hit by Clowney, I think it was. So that sucks. And I really want to see Carson Wentz be healthy for the rest of his career. I know it's like terrible as a Giant fan to say that, but still, I want to see this guy healthy because I do think he's a really talented player. Once again, seems like a good guy. His supporting cast could be better. I guess it's not that great. I know they drafted that slot receiver. It's slipping my mind now, but he's a good player. Jalen Reagor, he's a good player, so I'm excited to see what he can do with him. And then, of course, Alshon Jeffrey's kind of getting up there. Deshaun Jackson might be in some trouble for what he said, but he's up there in age as well. So we'll see. His supporting cast in terms of receivers is not great, but the tight ends they have there, I think, is the best tight end duo in football. So as long as Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are there, he should be fine. I think Carson Wentz is one of like the best, I guess, freestyle quarterbacks or school lot type quarterbacks in the league and just doing stuff off script, if that makes sense. But I'm a fan of him. He's a talented guy for sure. Next is Kirk Cousins. I think working with Kevin Stefanski last year did him wonders. I'm pretty sure I had like a 27-5 touchdown interception ratio last year. So Cousins is a guy that up until last year, I always perceived as average, but last year he won a playoff game in New Orleans, which is very tough, and put up some very good numbers as well. So I know they didn't do well in San Francisco, but that was a tough team to beat, and they were outmatched. It wasn't just Cousins' fault. So, for me, Cousins at this point in his career, I think has reached a point of being a good quarterback. I know he's not in the best situation now because Stephon Diggs is gone and stuff like that, but I think they got Justin Jefferson, they got Adam Thielen still, Irv Smith, Kyle Rudolph, so their offensive line for the Vikings has not been that great recently, but they make it work. And I am kind of concerned now because Stefanski's gone, and that's the coordinator that he had the best year of his career under, so we'll see if that does anything for him. But I think in terms of last year and what we can see from what he did in 2019, he had a great year. Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan in 2018, I think it was, had low-key MVP numbers, but the Falcons were just really bad, so that wasn't going to happen. But Matt Ryan, year after year, over 30 touchdowns, around 8 to 10 picks or so. I think he's a really good player. He just, for some reason, just comes off to me as a guy that can't win. Obviously, losing that Super Bowl did not help that narrative, but for some reason, just in the playoffs, it just can't get done for him. Like, I made a video pretty recently on teams that should have won a Super Bowl based on the teams they had. And, they found every single way to lose in the playoffs from 2008 to 2012. Then there was 2016. Then there was 2017 where the ball went through Julio Jones' hands against the Eagles. So that's rough. I can't blame Matt Ryan for all that stuff, and I feel bad for him in a way, but he's a guy who puts up really good numbers week after week. He can pop off for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns any given week, so he's a good quarterback in my mind. I wouldn't put him in that elite section, but he's a good quarterback. Next is Jimmy Garoppolo. You could argue that he's average. I'm not really going to, be too hard on you for that one, but Garoppolo does benefit from being in a perfect system with good players around him, with Deebo Samuel, and then we have George Kittle, obviously, and stuff like that. So he's in a perfect system. I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the best play callers in the league, so that definitely helps him for sure. But even before Shanahan, I think Garoppolo proved to us that he is a good quarterback. He played a couple games for the Patriots and looked good, so I'm not going to say this guy is elite, of course. I'm not going to say he's just serviceable. I think he's a good quarterback. He was one throw away from winning a damn Super Bowl this year, so just think of how different a narrative would be about that. I do think he's a good player, maybe a bit overrated, but you guys know if you follow my channel, I made a video before last season called "Is Jimmy Garoppolo Even Good?" and I supported the guy. I think he's a lot better than people were saying because Jimmy Garoppolo had that one practice where he was 0 for 5 with 5 interceptions and people were just crapping all over him, and I was like, guys, he's a good quarterback. It's practice. What happened? Who cares? So Garoppolo definitely proved me right. I think he's a good quarterback. Don't think he'll ever be elite, but he's definitely in the right system. Next, we have Baker Mayfield. I talked about the other guy on the left, Kirk Cousins, how Kevin Stefanski helped him so much. I made a video about Baker Mayfield a couple months ago, and I do think Kevin Stefanski will help Baker Mayfield become more of an efficient quarterback. And maybe I'm making excuses, but I think Freddie Kitchens was the worst coach in football last year. The play designs they ran and stuff like that were awful. Their offensive line was not good. I like the Browns' offensive line definitely improved a lot, so I'm definitely happy about that. I think Baker Mayfield's going to bounce back for sure. A good offensive line. They have two really good running backs. They have good receivers still with Odell and Landry. I think as long as Baker Mayfield is, right mentally, I think they'll be fine. It seems like he's been more mature lately. We haven't heard much in the media about Baker Mayfield saying something stupid, so that's a good thing for sure. I loved him in Oklahoma. I thought he would be a star one day. I still think it could happen. I just, I'm not going to take everything I saw at Oklahoma and his rookie year in the NFL and then see one bad year in 2019 and be like, no, Baker Mayfield sucks. I'm not going to say that. I think it's one bad year. His coach was terrible. The offensive line was terrible. I'm giving him another chance. I still think Baker Mayfield is good. This one, Cam Newton. This, of course, has to be healthy, but a healthy Cam Newton is still a damn good player. So if you watch my reaction to him signing with the Patriots, I went back to his 2018 numbers before sustaining that shoulder injury. He was playing at an MVP level. When Cam Newton's healthy, still a really good player. He's not 2015 Cam, but he can be somewhere close to that if he's healthy. So definitely just needs to stay healthy, in my opinion. Still a tremendous athlete. He's definitely had a offseason where he's working very hard. I'm excited for him. He felt like the Panthers gave up on him. He's going to be on some sort of revenge tour. So I feel bad for the AFC East if he is healthy, because if he is, I think the Patriots make the playoffs once again and have a lot of potential to make some noise. And I still think when he's healthy, Cam Newton is still a top 10 quarterback in football. So next, for the average/serviceable quarterbacks, I have Ryan Tannehill number one. So this is actually not in order, so I don't want to say number one, but Ryan Tannehill is the first guy I put. But Tannehill is a guy who arguably was the best quarterback in football the second half of last year. So for me to put him at just average, it might not sit right with some people, but for me, I'm not going to take everything he did in Miami. I mean, you could blame Adam Gase, of course, but I'm not going to take everything he did in Miami and just take the 8 games he played last year and think that's who he is. I think he's somewhere between that, which is more of just an average player. He's not going to be a god like he was in the second half of last year, I don't think, but he's definitely not as bad as he was in Miami. So I do think he'll be a decent starter, at least for the next couple of years. It will be interesting to see what happens. He's got good players around him. He just, can run play action off of Derrick Henry, which is just amazing, because defenses just go all out to stop him, and then you just roll out and you find an open Corey Davis or A.J. Brown downfield that makes his job a lot easier. Next, we have Phillip Rivers. Of course, now playing for the Colts is a very weird thing to hear. So they added Michael Pittman. They got T.Y. Hilton. They still have Jack Doyle. So there's decent weapons around him, as a really good offensive line. And Phillip Rivers is a guy that, up until last year, was actually playing really well, had a couple MVP-type seasons. Of course, he was not going to win the award because the Chargers as a team were not that great, aside from 2018 when they had that one good year. But, people know Phillip Rivers as being a loser. He's never won a Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. He's been close to getting to one a couple times. But for me, I would not say it's all Rivers' fault. The Chargers have always been a pretty bad organization, so I don't want to single-handedly blame him. But in terms of Rivers' numbers, he puts up good numbers every year. The interceptions were very high last year. I think he'll tone it down with that a bit. I think it was one bad year for him. I think he'll get back to more what he was doing the previous few years, which I think is more of in the good quarterback area. But now he's going to be 38 years old, I think it is. So I'm a bit concerned about the age and how much arm strength he has at this point in his career. But he can definitely be an average quarterback for the Colts next year, and that's kind of what they need, honestly. Next, we have Jared Goff, who, if I did this last year, might have been in a good category, but he took a step back for sure. The offensive line for the Rams sucked. I can't really blame him. He still got good weapons with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, and they have pretty good tight ends there as well. They traded Brandon Cooks, as we know, but I actually forgot to mention that for Deshaun Watson now, so that's my fault. But yeah, Brandon Cooks is there. But Jared Goff is a guy that benefits from a good system, a lot like Jimmy Garoppolo. But yeah, I just don't know with that team around him now. They're not as good as they used to be, so I'm not sure what type of numbers Goff will put up. And it's a pretty big year for Goff, because if he struggles 2 years in a row, they might start questioning his future and his, we'll see. But I'm pretty sure he's under contract, so they might have signed him a bit too early there, but we'll see how that plays out. Next, we have Daniel Jones. Of course, we talk about him all the time. So Jones is a guy last year that did some really good things and also did some really bad things. I think it's impossible to tell, honestly, based on his 12 starts, whether he's going to be an elite player in the future or not, or just a bad player. I really can't tell off 12 starts. But if he becomes more consistent in terms of the player I want him to be, he'll be a good quarterback one day. I don't see Daniel Jones ever being great or elite, which was one of my problems with drafting him. I don't think his ceiling is that high. But if he turns into a good quarterback and the Giants turn into a good team, I think it'll be a good mixture, and Daniel Jones can definitely win some playoff games, which is what we want. So that would be great, but I'm not sold on him yet for sure. I would say I'm probably 60-70% there, but I'm not 100% sure Daniel Jones is going to be a really good player one day. So next we have Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, Bridgewater's a conservative type quarterback. We've known that. Played really well for the Saints last year, signed for a lot with the Panthers. The Panthers are a bit concerning. They do have some good receivers. Their offensive line's kind of shaky, honestly, so we'll see how that one goes. But DJ Moore, they added Robbie Anderson, I believe, Curtis Samuel, so they have good receivers there. I don't know if he's going to have time to throw. He's definitely good on short passes, and I don't know if they're going to be able to utilize Robbie Anderson the way he wants to when he signed there, but we'll see how that one plays out. But it will be interesting to see what happens in the Teddy Bridgewater era for Matt Rule and the Panthers. Next, we have Gardner Minshew, who actually put up some pretty impressive numbers last year. I didn't see anything that made me think he was good to great, but he definitely looks serviceable and average to me. We'll see what happens. His surrounding and the team around him is not that great. They have a young offensive line that could be good. DJ Chark proved last year he's a good player. There are some other guys there that could be good, like Keelan Cole and stuff like that, but we'll see what happens. But Gardner Minshew will probably play basically all season next year unless he really struggles, but I think they want to give him a full 16 games and see what he's made of. So I think next year will be, we'll see if he's the future quarterback there or whether they will draft a quarterback in the 2021 draft. So it's a big year for Minshew. Next is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick played well last year in relief of Josh Rosen. I forget what his record was, but he definitely won 4 or 5, I think 5 games with the Dolphins. So, he had some times it was typical Fitzpatrick where he'd make a dumb throw and had some games where he had too many turnovers. But for the most part, I think Fitzpatrick did a good job last year, especially for the team he had around him. Devontae Parker had a good year with him as well. But outside of Parker, they didn't have many weapons there. I'm an Albert Wilson fan, but he's not always healthy. So the offensive line there sucks, obviously. So I think Fitzpatrick did about all he can. And even before that, played pretty well with the Buccaneers. So he's still serviceable in my mind. Then last, we have the backup quarterback for the Cowboys, which is weird to think about, but Andy Dalton. So Dalton's always been a pretty good regular season quarterback. It's just he sucks in the playoffs. I think his touchdown interception ratio in the playoffs is like 1-8. So the guy's 0-4 in the playoffs, 1-8 touchdown interception ratio. It's bad. So if he can find a way to win in the playoffs, then maybe that'll change the narrative about him. But until then, I can't call him anything better than average. You know what I mean? He puts up good regular season numbers, just doesn't perform in the playoffs, in my opinion. So that's bad for him. The best case scenario for him is that Dak Prescott and the Cowboys don't reach an agreement, and then he's the Cowboy starter, and then he has success. That's really the only good thing I can see happening for Dalton, but I still think he's a pretty decent quarterback. He's not great, but I think he does get the job done in most cases. I just would not trust him in a playoff game. So next on to not sold yet. So these are guys that either have not played enough or guys that I'm just honestly not sold on yet. So Josh Allen has played for 2 years now as a starter, made the playoffs last year. I still can't get over that lateral attempt he tried in the playoffs against the Texans to nearly lose the game. That was awful. I just cannot believe a quarterback would do that. But Josh Allen's a guy I watched a lot of because I drafted him in every fantasy league I was in last year because I love his rushing upside and stuff like that. But he's a guy who's tough to bring down. I mean, Josh Allen's a guy that once you get in the backfield, it's definitely not an automatic sack. He'll make you work for it. He's very strong. He can throw the ball very far. It's kind of like my Lamar Jackson argument. The guy's just not accurate, and he's definitely worse than Lamar Jackson, I think, at the accuracy. So it's not good. I think he's a decent short passer, honestly, but his deep accuracy, it kind of sucks, honestly. He can throw the ball far, it's just not accurate. So what does that really do for you? So I kind of feel bad for Josh Allen. Seems like a great guy. The potential is there. I mean, he has the arm talent for sure. It just needs to be more accurate. And I don't know if it'll ever happen, but at the same time, he has all the upside in the world. It just needs to come together for him. I just don't see it happening right now. That's why I'm not sold on it yet. But I would say if Josh Allen one day was an MVP caliber player, I guess it wouldn't be too shocking because when you watch him play, it's he makes plays that only certain players can make. You know what I mean? So there's maybe some plays that only Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen can make, which sounds crazy, but it's true because Josh Allen is super talented. He's just very inconsistent and not accurate, so therefore I'm not sold. Next is Sam Darnold. I mean, Darnold's a guy kind of like Allen in a way. I mean, Darnold is a lot more accurate, I would say, but in terms of the deep ball accuracy, it's not that good for Darnold. His surroundings have not been that great. I mean, the offensive line for the Jets isn't anything to brag about. He lost Robbie Anderson. I know they replaced him with Brashad Perriman. We'll see how that pays off. They have Le'Veon Bell, but their offensive line still isn't anything great. They added a good center in Connor McGovern, but that's about it. So I'm concerned for Darnold. I mean, this is year 3 for him. He still has Adam Gase as his coach, so we'll see how that one goes, but Darnold, once again, he's a guy who seems like a good guy, so I definitely would root for him, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, I just think there was too many plays at USC where he made bad decisions and just had games that were terrible, and then sometimes he played like he was the best quarterback in the nation, so it's very weird to gauge him. He definitely has his inconsistencies, but if he ever put it all together, he would be great, but I don't know. I just don't trust Sam Darnold for some reason, because one game he'll look fantastic and the next game he'll look like he shouldn't be in the NFL, so I don't really know how to gauge him, and therefore I'm not sold yet. So next is Justin Herbert, and this is a guy that's been compared to Mitch Trubisky by some people. I don't think he's that bad, but I also would not have taken him 6 overall, so I'm a little concerned about that pick for sure. I think he has his inconsistencies, just like Sam Darnold does. But he does have plays, though, where he does show some really special things. Like, he does have a really good arm. He does have really good mobility for his size, and I can see why teams would fall in love with him. I just personally think there's too many inconsistencies for me to take him that early. I just think he's too inaccurate at times. And for Jordan Love, the next guy, I think Jordan Love's another guy that could be really good. He definitely has a talent for it, but he just turns the ball over too much. He just has too many turnover-worthy plays, makes too many bad decisions, kind of like Jameis Winston in a way, who's next on the list. But Jordan Love, it was kind of a confusing pick for me with the Packers. I'm not sure why they did it. He's not really like Aaron Rodgers in any particular way, especially with the turnovers and stuff like that. So we'll have to see. I could be wrong about Jordan Love. I just don't think it was the right pick for the Packers at the right time. But if he turns out to be a franchise quarterback, then yeah, it's a great pick. But we'll see how that one plays out. For Jameis Winston, it's always confusing with him because he does some things I really like and then some things that are terrible. So he'll throw you 4 touchdowns and then throw a game-losing pick 6, and it's like, you don't know what to do with him. So I think he's really good in the pocket, gets out of a lot of bad situations, but his decision-making is just awful. He did get LASIK eye surgery this offseason, so hopefully that does something for him. He's now in a really good situation with the Saints, and if Drew Brees were to retire after next year and the Saints don't replace him with a quarterback in the draft, this could be Jameis Winston's team, depending on how much Sean Payton likes him. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm not giving up on him yet, but it hasn't been good so far. There's definitely a lot of red flags, but I do think if he starts for the Saints in the future, there is potential to turn his career around. Lastly, for this category, Otunga Valois. So he's with the Dolphins now, and I think he's a guy that is not going to be a superstar, but I think at one point will be a good player. Now, the reason I said not sold yet is because of the injuries. And, people thought he was going to fall all the way to the bottom of the first round. That wasn't going to happen. I think his injury updates were pretty good and stuff like that, and the Dolphins took him 5th overall. So I do think if he's healthy, he'll have a fine career. I just don't see it being a superstar level. But at the end of the day, I think he'll be in that good category with the Staffords, the Roethlisbergers, and the Carson Wentz type guys. You know what I mean? I don't think he'll be great or a superstar, but I think he'll be a pretty good quarterback at some point. But I'm not completely sold yet because of the injuries. And now on to the guys I think are below average. So we'll get through these quickly. Derek Carr is just I call him the check down king. He does not take as many shots downfield as I think he should. He doesn't have the best team around him. I'll give him that. He had that one really great year in 2015, I think it was. But outside of that, it's kind of just been whatever. He just checks the ball down too much. I think for some reason, I don't know why he's still the starter there. I don't know what John Gruden sees in him exactly, but he's still the Raiders starter for this long, so I guess good for him. But I just, if I was the GM, I would not make him my starter. I would just not feel good about that. Next is Dewayne Haskins, and Haskins was the guy I wasn't really too in love with at Ohio State. I know he put up great numbers, but his footwork was always questionable. He threw off his back foot way too much. I think at Ohio State had the perfect situation around him, so I kind of held that against him in a way. Now, he did show some flashes of good things in his rookie year, but also some bad things as well. I remember there was one play on a crossing route to Terry McLaurin to the left where he completely missed a wide open touchdown, and that's when I was like, oh, that's a bad look. But, he will have time to prove he's the guy. There were rumors about Cam Newton going there, and that didn't happen, so now Dwayne Haskins will be able to prove he's the guy for Washington. I think he's lost some weight this offseason, so he's definitely trying, so we'll see if that happens or not. Tyrod Taylor might be the starter for the Chargers this year in all likelihood, probably at least to start the year. So Taylor's a guy that could get you to the playoffs sometimes. I think he's somewhere between average and below average, if that makes sense. Like, he could get you to the playoffs and maybe win a game, but probably not. But if you start him for 16 games, he'll win you 7-9 games, somewhere around there, and he'll do whatever. He's another guy who likes to check down and be conservative, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to win you a Super Bowl, which is the ultimate goal. Joe Flacco, speaking of winning a Super Bowl, it happened once. He did have a great defense, obviously, but Flacco's been pretty bad for the past few years, and then he went to Denver last year. They had some very tough losses. I would not put all those on him, obviously, but I just think Flacco's best days are behind him. He's now Sam Darnold's backup, so if Darnold sucks next year, then maybe there's a chance he gets some playing time, but I think outside of that, we probably won't see much of Joe Flacco, and I think his starting days are pretty much over. Mason Rudolph, outside of throwing to the running back, he wasn't really all that great last year. He definitely has his inefficiencies, so I don't think he's a starting option in the future. I liked what I saw from him in college at some point, and I thought he had some potential, but from what I saw last year, they were way too limited with him in the playbook, and the Steelers definitely did not trust him to just open things up and take more chances, so definitely didn't like that. Maybe it was because they thought he was not ready and stuff like that, and of course they didn't expect Roethlisberger to miss all those games, but from what I saw in his games last year, I was really not too enthused by him. Marcus Mariota, another guy that's just way too conservative. Maybe he can win you 7, 8, 9 games. He went 9-7 with the Titans a couple of years, but he won't win you a playoff game probably. I know he beat the Chiefs one year by throwing a touchdown pass to himself, but this guy will probably not win a Super Bowl anytime soon. So I'm definitely not a person that loves Marcus Mariota. He had a potential. He won't turn the ball over too much, which is good, but he also does not do enough good things for me to make him a good starting quarterback. Will Grier, I think, based on what we saw last year, it could be trash or a bust, but he only started 3 games, maybe 4 games, but he looked really bad in those games. His arm strength is definitely questionable, to say the least, and I liked what I saw from him at West Virginia, but I just don't think his arm strength is good enough for the NFL. I could be wrong about that. He's another guy that showed some Tony Romo-type traits, but his arm is just not good enough in my opinion, so we'll see if he gets another chance to start or not. Mitch Trubisky, of course, we know him as the guy taking over Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, so that sucks for him, but definitely, as we know now, taken way too high in the draft. Had a pretty good 2018 season, but I really think in 2018 that they squeezed every bit of goodness out of Mitch Trubisky that they could that year. I think last year was more of the real Mitch Trubisky, and 2017. I just think 2018 was best case scenario for him. So I think Matt Nagy's pretty fed up with him because based on their actions, they traded for the next guy. Nick Foles, a Super Bowl champion. Now, last year was unfortunate for him. He went to the Jaguars. He started the first game, got hurt on a touchdown pass, then started some games in the middle of the year. He was awful. He was benched for Minshew. Maybe he was still kind of hurt. I'm not sure. But then this offseason was traded for a 4th round. So Foles, I think, in the right system is a fine starter. He could be a good starter or an average starter in a good system. The Jaguars were not it for him, and I understand the Jaguars' offense was just not that great. So I get it, but I kind of feel bad for Nick Foles in a way now because he was the man in Philly, and now he's bouncing around to team again. So hopefully he finds some success as a starter for the Bears if he's given the opportunity. And lastly, for trash/bust is Josh Rosen. So I'm the fool that wanted my favorite team, the Giants, to take Rosen number 2. Now, in fairness, I did want Baker Mayfield, but of course he was taken. So also in fairness, I did say that Josh Rosen was going to be good unless he got injured or went to the wrong team. Now, obviously, he went to the wrong team twice, so I feel bad for him. He's a guy that definitely had a lot of potential. I think had one of the smoothest throwing motions I've seen, but he was very accurate at UCLA. Did have some injury concerns. Some people said there was some attitude concerns and stuff like that, but I didn't really, take account into that stuff too much. But in the NFL, he has not played well. He needs to play better. That definitely, I can't say it's all his surroundings. I mean, he has to take some accountability himself. He needs to play better. Not sure he'll get a starting job anytime soon, but he might be a backup somewhere, and if someone gets hurt, I do think in the right situation, Josh Rosen can salvage his career, but I just don't know if he'll ever get that right situation. I think I had this argument with somebody. If he went where Jared Goff went, he was in Jared Goff's situation, I think he could have done similar things to Jared Goff. I don't think those guys are too far off. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that, but Josh Rosen, skill-wise, from what we saw in college, cannot be that far off from Jared Goff. So maybe I'm a fool, but that's just my opinion. But guy went to the wrong team, is what it is. So that'll do it for this video. I mean, this is a long-ass video. I did not really expect that, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you want another type of tiers list, then I could do that. Maybe NBA, MLB, maybe another position in the NFL, whatever you guys want, let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if I screwed up anywhere, and I'll talk to you guys next time.